Good evening. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of Reimagine Productivity. It's been an absolute blast the last few Mondays, in fact, the last few weeks, as we have gone through this topic on reimagine productivity and how we can drive productivity in this year 2021. We talked about the fact that many people have gone through so many challenges and are still going through challenges. That notwithstanding, we've got to do the best we can do with what we have in 2021 to get us the things that we believe God has put in our hearts. Now, if you haven't seen the other sessions, please do check across our channels. It's on our the different YouTube channels we're on. It's on Facebook across all the different pages we have on Facebook. We've got this there. And before we go on today, please share this link with your friends. We've got a guest today that you just need to listen to. Now, let me tell you how I got to this guest. I knew I wanted to do something on productivity. And as soon as the idea got into my mind, I started thinking, who am I going to get? And things have a way of panning out. I was on LinkedIn, and right there in front of me, the name came up. And I saw the name, I was thinking, oh, interesting. And as I looked at the title, I saw Certified Professional Organizer, and I saw Productivity Expert. So I thought, let me just try. You never know. Maybe I would get a favorable response. So I tried. I sent a note out. Hey, and I was so formal in the way I sent it. Please, I am so. We're having this program. I hope you can join us and all of that. Guess what? I was shocked. She did. She responded. And I thought, She responded. So I thought, okay, so let me push this a little bit more. And then the communication started and the conversation started from there. And she agreed to come on the program. For me, that's a lesson in itself. All right. Because it wasn't something I'd ever done. I just thought, hey, people out there need to know about productivity. And I looked online, I found someone who's an expert in the field, and I said, while I can talk about the principle, I can tell you from my experience what I've seen. Let's get someone who leaves the process. Let's get someone who who helps other people to get the kind of results that we're talking about. And that's how I got our guest for today. Now, that's enough of me babbling. Let me get our guest in. Our guest is a certified professional organizer. She's one of Africa's leading productivity experts. She's an author. She's a podcaster. Listen, as soon as she agreed, I went to her website. I started listening to her podcast. Let me see what she say. Let me understand where her mindset is. And I went through her podcasts. She's an author. So I saw her book. I bought her book as well. And I said, let me start to read this book and see what she's all about. She teaches and empowers people with practical tools and strategies to live a fuller and to perform a fuller life and to perform more optimally. She serves as the founding chairperson for the Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals in Nigeria. She's the recipient of the Shine Legacy Award in Productivity. She's a speaker and recipient of the award for Exceptional Woman of Excellence in Cairo. She's got I don't even know where to stop. My goodness, she's got all these awards. Please join me in welcoming Cresta Durojaiye to the program this evening. Cresta, you are welcome.
Hi, Akin. Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm sure you must have been listening to me rambling off there in my intro because I just had to
Oh,
get that piece out there to say thank you for honoring this invitation. We really appreciate this.
I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So let me dive right into it in the short time that we've got here. The first thing that caught my attention, okay, was certified professional organizer. And when we were exchanging that initial communication, I said I did not even know something like that existed. So tell us, how did you get into this area?
Great. Okay. This is going to be interesting. So, I've always had a thing for organizing, but from when I was growing up, I got to live with my dad died when I was really young, about age 7. So I got to live with an aunt who was taking care of me and training me and all of that. And in the process, I imbibed a lot of her pluses, her expertise, her areas of strength. And this auntie was an amazing, as at that time, I don't think there was anything called organizing, but she was an amazing organizer. She labeled everything, she measured, and everything was always in its place. And she always used to rhyme to us and say, a place for everything, everything in its place. And over the years, growing up with her, I imbibed this organizing qualities. So it became part of me, and I just continued with it in life, but I never even knew there was anything like it until 2014. My business partner and I began to sit down and think of how to put together a business and what it should be. And in listing out our areas of strength, we realized that we both had similar strengths, and we went online to try and figure out what name are we going to give this business because it has so many branches to it. And in trying to figure that out online, we saw professional organizing, and we're like, excuse you? So all of these things that we do are under an umbrella body of some sort. And so we began to experiment and contact the National Association of Productivity experts in the US. And they responded. We got registered, became members, and before I knew what was happening, I had become a professional organizer and I began to train. So, one thing that stood out for me was yes, I had the innate skills that I imbibed from growing up. But to become an expert in the field, I had to train. I began to study. I began to look out for all the right examinations, certifications to sit for, the right books to read, the right resources to engage myself with. And voila, from having that dream of becoming a professional organizer, I grew to the next level to want to become the best in what I do. And that made me start looking out to doing the CPO exams. And I tell you, from 2015, I began to dream. And I told myself that I wanted to be the go to, the number one person when they talk of organizing in Nigeria and in Africa. And indeed, I began putting one building block on top of the other. And I took the examination, and voila, I didn't pass the first time. I must be honest. It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of consistency. It took a lot of how badly do you want it? And that's how come I didn't make it the first time, but I sat again, I read, and then I passed eventually the second time, and the rest, like they always say, is history. Cresta Durojaiye, certified professional organizer. That's how it came about.
Oh, wow. You know something interesting in what you've just said there that I picked out? It's this thing that when you were going to reach out to that organization in the US, you were not sure they were going to respond. And for me,
Nah,
2021 is really about taking those chances. You don't know if people are going to respond the way you want. Take the chance anyway. The worst that can happen is somebody would say no. And no the first
exactly. And
time,
then you find another option.
absolutely no the first time doesn't mean no forever. It just means, well, that's the first
Exactly.
no, and you work on that. Wow, wow, fantastic story there. Now, let me ask you this question. we're at the start of the year, and there's the usual, what we call the start of the year syndrome. Everybody is raring to go. There are all these great ideas that they have. And, okay, COVID 19 has impacted people being able to go to the gyms like they would. But usually, about this
Yeah.
time of the year, the gyms will be packed. But give it a little bit till around end of February, March, and the whole thing kind of fizzles out.
Fizzles out.
So, the question for you, as a professional in this area, how do we make 2021 different?
Okay. So me, I realize that most times people go about setting these goals because they genuinely want to make it happen. They genuinely want to achieve those goals. Now, in that genuineness is one error that a lot of us make repeatedly. So we write down big goals and we want big results to come from them, and we also want it to happen immediately. We forget that it is very important and most critical that you zoom in on each of your goals to make sure that they fall within the SMART goal rules or guidelines. SMART, S, that the goals are specific, that M, they are measurable, A, they are actually attainable or achievable. Now, R, that they are realistic. And then T, that they are time bound. Now, we just set big goals, like someone can say, I want to lose weight. That's just big and ambiguous. It is not specific. How much weight do you want to lose and within what specific time frame? And you have to make sure that it is realistic. You cannot say, when you know it's not possible to come down from 100 kg to 20 within a month. That is not a SMART goal. It is not realistic. So most times we make that mistake and we just write what we wish we could achieve without checking if it is actually smart in terms of being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and that it is measurable by time. And that's why most times immediately we start out huffing and puffing, we begin excited. Somewhere along the line, the reality begins to set in, and we realize that, it's looking like I'm not going to be able to achieve it, and then things begin to fizzle out, like you say. So I would encourage that once you set a goal, you make sure that it follows the SMART rules, and then that you break every goal of yours down into bite sizes. It is easier, you would agree with me, to eat a tiny bite of beef than for you to carry an entire cow and try to eat it all at once. So when you break it down to bite sizes, it's easier to pick up and achieve, to eat, to get done, and then you must know that this is a timeline you have put in place. It helps you to be able to measure, to say, how far have I gone? How much further do I need to go? Now, when you put it that way, it becomes more practical and it's easier for you to achieve. So that's what I would encourage for this year, that we all set, if you haven't set your goals, if you're going to set goals, make sure that they follow the SMART rules for setting goals. Make sure that you break them down to tiny bite sizes that are easier to accomplish. It's easier to say I want to lose 1 kg in a month than to say I want to lose 100 kg of weight in 2 weeks. That's actually impossible and difficult. And the moment you realize that you can't make it, you would give up. So that's what I would encourage for this year. Do it differently.
So,
Tell me how it works.
a question for you there, Cresta, is this.
Okay.
Some people may say that, well, I've been trying to set smart goals. I've been trying to create things that I can achieve. Yet they've still not been achieving the things that they want to achieve. What would you say to someone like that? Someone who hasn't recognized the fact that, well, what you think is smart may not really be smart.
Okay, so what guides me usually is trying to be practical. You hear me say all the time that I love to be practical. When you're practical, you will be able to understand better where the error or where you're erring from. So, for example, I worked with a couple of people and they have said exactly what you said, that, oh, I've been writing goals and it's just not happening. So most times I already know where that is headed. It's just not happening. It's not writing it on a sheet of paper or typing it somewhere and just letting it sleep. It's not just going to happen by itself. You actually have to get involved and begin to work. But before you work, so in working with people like this, I realize that most times they have genuinely written the goals out, but they don't even know how to go about doing it. So we start out by looking at every goal to make sure that they are actually specific. Some people can say, for example, I would like to get the US, I would like to win the US lottery. When? Within what time frame? And specifically, what are the steps involved in actually getting? Some people just say it, but they haven't bothered to find out, what do I need to do to actually win the lottery? What documents are required? What time frame do they usually announce this thing? So just writing it does not, that goal is not going to happen. But if I write it down and I go all out to find out at what time of the year do they usually submit for this, what documents do I need so that I can prepare? Do I need documents from school? So we don't, the truth is, we don't go into the nitty gritty. We just desire, we just write, and we just expect that, voila, bracadabra, it will just happen. We need to go in and begin to inspect every goal one by one, find out what is required, break it down into bite sizes, and then begin to work on it. Most times, we don't work on it, or we start out working. When we meet a roadblock, we don't go back to the drawing board to find out what went wrong. How come I'm meeting roadblocks? Immediately we meet a roadblock, sometimes we just give up. We throw in the towel and then it never happens.
Wow. Let me ask you this question because one of the reasons I wanted you on this program is this. Let me confess. One of the reasons is this, because you work with other clients on this kind of on these issues. And what it means is you would have seen a trend of some sort where, hey, majority of you come in, this is the problem a lot of them have. Can you touch on two or three of the things that you have seen consistently? I know you've talked about being smart, being practical, and all of that, but what are the things that you are seeing consistently?
Okay. So I realize in working with people that, again, I would say people are always genuine when they say they want to do better, they want to be more productive, they want to achieve certain goals. They are indeed genuine. But where the problem lies is, number one, they are not as willing to invest the resources. And in resources, in saying resources, I'm referring to time, I'm referring to the money that you may need to either pay for a course or pay to be coached or pay to be helped or pay to be trained. People are usually not willing to invest the amount of time and money that is required, or other resources required, to achieve those goals that they have put together. So that willingness, sometimes you will think they are actually willing because they sound desperate. And then when you give when the time comes or the opportunity plays out, they are not just ready or willing to put in that time. They start getting so busy with so many other things. And at the end, you begin to realize this was the problem all along. The second part is that you realize that people don't turn up, they don't show up. So somebody tells you, I absolutely, Cresta, I really need help. I've been setting goals and it's just not working. And you talk with them, you have a session, and you say, okay, let's take it up from here. And you fix a timeline and you're supposed to meet with them. They don't show up. I tell you for real. You would be seated in front of your computer waiting, and somebody who you have an appointment with, who genuinely wants to get things done, just does not show up. And you could speak with them later and they'll realize, oh my God, I forgot. You forgot? You didn't even set a timer or an alarm, something to remind you that this is very important to me and I would like to take it on. Then the third one that baffles me, people are not ready to put in the work. So they could pay for a coach or a strategist, and I think that they hope that the strategist will do the work for them. So they're not exactly ready to put in the work that is required to achieve the result. So you're not putting in the time, you're not putting in the required resources, maybe in terms of payments required. You want to buy a course, you want to buy a book, you're not ready to invest in that area. At the same time, you're not ready to turn up and show up. Every time you're being looked for all over the place. And then you don't want to work. You don't want to put in the effort it takes. Nothing good comes easy. When you see people consistently achieving their goals and breaking glass ceilings, it is because some work has gone in somewhere. You have to put in the work. The coach or the strategist cannot work for you. They can give you guidelines, they can give you directions to help you map your route, but they cannot go the journey for you. You need to put in the work. So those are the three things that I notice keep showing up over and over again.
Wow. Let me take this question further because um, these are things that affect the individual, right? What you're talking about here, these are things that the person needs to say, the person needs to do, the person needs to work on. Before we move away from the point around personal productivity, there's a question I have for you here, and that is this. Thinking about it from an organizational perspective, you could say, hey, look at the financial reports. The financial reports will tell you how well that organization is doing. You can see if they're making money, if they're making a loss. You can see who the directors are. You can even now, people have things like net promoter scores that allow you to see how your customers perceive you and your business and what you do. How do you measure this from a personal perspective? What do I look at to figure out if I'm meeting the productivity level I should be meeting or not? What do I look at there? Help us out.
Is that as an individual, what do you look at to be able to measure your productivity?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. So, um, generally, when people talk of measuring productivity, so if you check the dictionary meaning of productivity, it is the state or quality of being productive. When it comes to our thinking, productivity begins to look different. It begins to look like your ability to achieve big results, like magically within a short time frame, and if possible with little or no effort. If it can just happen, that's how most people perceive productivity. So we just feel that immediately we put A and B and then immediately it just happens magically. We don't want to put in so much time and all of that. That's why I'm going through all of this. Is it guides how you measure productivity, how you perceive productivity, guides how you measure productivity. Now, so that's our thinking. We want magic. We want even corporate bodies, individuals. We want to put in just a little, and within a short time frame, we want something big to happen. But I would say to measure productivity, how I am guided is I always try to ensure that there is consistent progress until I gain mastery or until I succeed with what it is. So it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be giant, just baby steps consistently over a long period of time will bring the results. So, how do I now measure? Since this is how I perceive productivity, I measure by checking, did I actually make progress between yesterday and today? For me, it never has to be humongous. It just has to be a baby step consistently every day and ongoing, because for me, productivity is a lifestyle. So if I know that where I am today is a little bit away from where I was yesterday, I was productive. So you need to understand productivity for yourself, know what it really means, and based on the meaning of productivity or what it means to you, you would be able to measure better. So for me, consistent baby steps, consistent baby steps over a long period of time. So to measure, I just need to look. Where was I yesterday? Where am I today? If I made a little move, that's great. That's productive. The next day, same thing. The next day. So I'll just say measure your productivity by ensuring that today you have made a move from where you were yesterday. Once that is happening in whatever sphere or aspect of your life that you're gradually progressing on a daily basis, for me, that's it.
Wow, wow, fantastic. All right, let's move on from um, personal productivity to organizational productivity. Now, if there is anything I hear a lot of, and when I say a lot of, in the last sort of 12 months, 24 months, this thing has been coming up quite frequently. And it is this, that the age of heroism is over. The time where you had the Thomas Edisons, who were the big people inventing things, and that age is over. We're now in the age of collaboration. And the question to you is this: how do you balance this desire for personal productivity with the compromises that you need to make for overall group performance? How do you balance those two things?
Okay. So I would bring that forward with a practical example. So started professional organizing in 2014, and as at that time it wasn't very popular in Nigeria. Even now it's not as popular, but started out, then. And over time we kept building, growing. Now, if you're thinking of personal productivity from the angle of just me, you may not be able to go that far. But if you think of it in terms of growing, what's the big picture? We always have to understand what the big picture is. So, beyond wanting to be an excellent professional organizer or a certified professional organizer, I desired to see professional organizing grow in Nigeria and in Africa, and to take it out to meet whatever standards have been applicable globally. And based on that, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. So I'm excellent for myself, but I can't go that far. If I want to do it big and go really far, I need to actually grow the industry. And so collaboration came in. I reached out to other professional organizers. I started encouraging other people who knew they had a bit of organizing inside of them and telling them, you know what, you could do something big out of this. Now, in gathering all of them together, there's just not Cresta as the professional organizer. There are about 25, 30 other people who have now joined the association, and together we are pushing the organizing industry in Nigeria and making it big and making it recognized globally. So people now know that the industry exists and is growing. But if I had decided to run me, myself, and I, then it wouldn't have grown that big. Yes, you'll be hearing Cresta, but you won't hear of organizing in Nigeria. So if you want to go alone, you may make some giant strides for yourself. But if you want to make it go faster and grow bigger in a shorter space of time, gather everybody around, work with people who have plugins that when all of you put your efforts together, you make a big boom versus a tiny spark that you alone can bring about.
You said something there that I want to press on a little bit more because I think it is quite powerful. You said, don't just grow yourself, try to grow the industry. That is powerful. Oh my goodness. That means a lot of people want to grow their business, but they're not thinking industry. And as soon as you start to think industry, your perspective changes. Oh, that is so fantastic. All right, let me go on before I just forget that we have viewers who want to hear you talk here. Now, there's a question that keeps coming to my mind as we look at organizational productivity. And that is this: a lot of companies have formal processes in place where they say, hey, we've got a personal development plan. They work with individuals to make sure they can move up the career within the context of that organization. Where do you draw the line between relying on something like that and seeking help from a productivity expert like yourself?
So I would say productivity is never a one size fits all, and it is never a destination in itself that you would say you have arrived. Like I said earlier, you take steps every day and you keep doing it becomes a lifestyle. So I would say there's no one size fits all. It depends on the unique situation or scenario that you find yourself. There are scenarios where corporate productivity, as in addressing it as a body, an entire company, makes more progress. And there's a place for the individual productivity. So you cannot say, oh, the company-wide or corporate productivity is constantly better than individual. They go hand in hand. Now, the company may have very strong productivity guidelines and all of that, and it helps to ensure that everybody is plugged in. But if I, as an individual, doesn't understand what is actually required of me, and as a result, I often fall out, regardless of what the umbrella body has put in place, I may not be able to deliver like I should. So I would say one does not supersede the other, but in specific scenarios, one may be more required than the other, or in seasons, depending on where you are or what the situation is, one may take an upper hand over the other. So that's what I would say.
Now, I want to obviously, you do this for a living, you do this as a business, you've talked to different people. One area I want you to address is this notion that sometimes the shift that you need to make is so big and you don't really want to make the shift. Can you share one or two examples of places where someone made such a small shift and it transformed their lives completely?
Okay. So one example comes to mind immediately. Is it last year? No, 2019 December. I worked with a client, and not a corporate client, an individual client, and this person made small moves that added up to a big boom. Let me explain. So she had two skills that, she was very good at them, but she didn't quite know how else to put them to use, because she looked at the pricing and she felt people are not going to pay for my cakes at this amount. People are not going to pay for this other service at this amount. And I said to her, why don't you break it down? Same thing I spoke about earlier, into bite sizes. If you're saying one cake is 20,000 naira, for example, and indeed, when you do the calculations, it is genuinely 20,000 naira that it will cost you in terms of labor, in terms of all that you need to put it together. But if you sell it at that amount, one or two people who know you may decide to say, okay, let me buy this. And they will buy, but you have sold to just one or two people. But if you reduced the size of the cake from the big size it was to tiny sizes and price them lower, you will find out that you may sell more. And we put the experiment to place. And immediately, she made tiny loaves instead of a big size cake. She made tiny loaves and she called them loaves. She just re strategized the whole thing, changed the name, put a simple label, changed the packaging from something really fancy to a nice package, but costs a lot less. Tell you what, in no time, people were ordering for 20 packs of the cake, 20 packs here, 10 packs here, 5 here. And before she knew it, by the end of December, we started this challenge at the beginning of December. By the end of December, she had made, I can't call the amount, a huge amount of sale that she never expected. And on the other part of it, she said, people don't usually work with artists that they are not comfortable with in terms of makeup and all of that. And I said, how about you hook up with other makeup artists who may be overwhelmed in this festive season? They may want you to help out and take some burden off them. Like you said earlier, it's either a yes or a no. And we just went on Instagram and downloaded names of a lot of makeup artists, and she sent these messages to all of them. Believe it or not, responses began to come in and she began to get deals. So she was doing the cake on the side, she was doing the makeup, and by the end of December, the little steps that she took in doing what she was doing before in a different way blew her mind, blew her profit margin. So sometimes it's not always about the big or the humongous. Sometimes think small, think little, think baby steps, think bite sizes. It makes all the difference.
Wow, fantastic. All right. So before we leave this point on organizational productivity, I want you to help address a point, and that is this. Um, a lot of people talk about uh, the impact of culture on productivity. You are very well traveled. Some think that the reason you are more productive is because you are in one environment and you are succeeding a lot more in that environment. What impact do you think culture has on one's ability to be productive and to embrace this message of productivity?
Okay. I would say that culture does have a huge impact. And I got to understand this better when I started working with clients beyond my local environment. I started working with international clients. I realized that the attitude that someone, an individual, portrays may differ based on their culture. What do I mean by this? So sometimes you work with people and realize that if they are from an environment where the people are results oriented, pushful about achieving results and go getters, and they are ready to go to any length to do what it takes to succeed, you find out that those people are usually more open to embracing new ideas, starting new businesses, or doing their businesses in a different way from how they have been doing it. Because in the environment or the culture that they find themselves, you must succeed. Everything you do must work. In fact, some environments or some cultures may feel even if you're not an expert or you're not knowledgeable in this area, just put your head in there and you will succeed. Now, when you work with people with that kind of mindset, you find out that they're ready to try anything, they're ready to break the glass ceiling. But when you work with people from an environment that is a lot less pushful or desperate, I would say, where everything works. So you pay your bills and you get what you paid for. You invest in something and you get it coming. You don't need to fight. You just do what you need to do. Pay the taxes, pay all the required fees, and it just comes to you. In such environments, most times, without knowing it, the people in that culture just are a bit more relaxed. They don't understand when you say, "Oh, I think you should." From what I can see, maybe you should set financial goals, and they'll be looking at you like, "Hey, I get some certain amount of hand downs from government, or I'm entitled to something here and there. So what's the force? What's the push?" So I began to realize that with each culture comes a different idea. Some it is with career, some it is with business, finance, health, so it just affects you based on the culture or the environment or what thrives in the environment that you find yourself in. So truly and truly, it does affect your productivity as a whole, your ability to want to push a bit more or just be laid back and say, wow, what's the fuss? So, yes, it does affect it.
All right, we've got about 15 minutes to go. But before we do that, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to address uh, your book. You have a new book out, and we've got a few questions to ask on that book. But before we do, let's take a short break. So, welcome back. Thank you for staying there with us. Now, Krista, this book,
Yes.
Madhouse, The Roadmap to Decluttering Your Sanity. Huh.
Yourself to sanity.
Interesting, decluttering yourself to sanity. All right. So, tell us what inspired this book.
Okay. Well, my 7 years in the organizing industry inspired it. my work with various types of clients. When I mean various type of clients, sometimes it's drama, sometimes it's going smooth, sometimes when you read the book you would understand, and you hear me saying repeatedly with all due respect, because a lot of stuff that happens in there comes with a lot of challenges. So what inspired it is organizing, 7 years of professional organizing, hands-on organizing in homes, in offices, with people in terms of time management, the experiences I had drawn from all of these various aspects of organizing and the various people I worked with inspired it. And then I also realized that organizing, from my experience meeting with other organizers in Brazil, US, Italy, France, I realized that organizing is different in every environment. Like you said earlier, based on culture, it differs. So I felt that I needed, after experiencing it for 7 years hands on, I needed to let my counterparts in other countries that are also in organizing know what organizing is like in my country. Then I also wanted people within my country to know that there's something called organizing, because it's a new industry, and a lot of people, when they hear organizing, they just think, oh, cleaning and just arranging the place. So I wanted to write that book for people to actually come in and know what happens when we organize. And then finally, it's three-pronged. The third one is for organizers, budding organizers, experienced organizers in Nigeria, to learn a thing or two from all of my experiences over the years, hands-on organizing.
So there's a question. When I saw the book, and I bought a copy of the book and I've been reading the book. Um, One thing that struck me is your storytelling approach. You've kind of built it out as a novel. Why that style of writing?
Okay, so because I wanted everybody who loves to read to find it interesting enough to get involved, I needed to put a story to it, and I needed to make it interesting. I needed to make it funny. I wanted people to be able to pick up the book and read it without wanting to put it down till dawn. Now, if I had gone the route, because I actually had people ask me this same question, people who worked with me, my editors, my publishers, like, why did you decide to go this route? It's not traditional, it's not the usual thing. I'm like, I think that if I took something serious, something people are not so familiar with, and I tell it in a story form, in a relatable format, people will be able to take it in more. People will be able to explain it back to someone else. But if I came in my academic format, saying productivity, organizing, giving definitions and all of that, the regular person may not be interested. Only organizers will be. So if you want everybody to know about organizing, then write it in a story form. People love stories, they love gists. So I had to make it a gist kind of book for starters.
All right. So pick one character in the book and talk to us about that one character. And like you
Oh,
said, they were influenced by some real stories there. But pick one character and tell us about that character.
okay. I'm sure you already know the character I'm going to pick. It's Dainabo Taria. Like, hello. You actually do have clients that can be very funny. But because you have, over time, learned what it means to follow the codes of the profession of professional organizing, you know that even if the client is really like making you want to pull your hair out, you have to compose yourself, you have to comport yourself, you have to be also nice. That character, with all due respect, he was very daring. He was very, don't say I said it, he was very troublesome. And I have actually experienced clients like that. I had a client, a certain mama, who gave us the time of our lives. We did her her scan visit to check what is required to be done. And after 1 year, believe it or not, we still hadn't been able to do the work. And eventually, when we got there after a year and she was ready to do the work, we got in. She was difficult, but we had to, like we did with the character Dana Botaria, I had to find a way to appeal to the client to be friends with me enough to allow me into her space. Physical entrance of the space is one thing, but allowing you to actually come in and change and transform and work with the person is another ball game altogether. But tell you what, by the time I worked with this client for 3 days, 4 days, we worked for 7 days. Eventually, before I left there, she had given me a new title. Instead of calling me Cresta, she would say Delta, Niger Delta, come here, Niger Delta. And by the time I was leaving, she was so fond of me. And she would say, I'm really going to miss you, Niger Delta. And I'm like, Mommy, and tell you what, in this profession, you get adopted as people's daughters and you adopt people. So I adopted her as my mommy. And when I was leaving, I'm like, Mommy, we loved working with you. And she said, Delta, I'm really going to miss you. You don't want to know what we go through here, but it's enjoyable. I love, love, love what I do.
All right. I've got a question for you here. In page 125, you said something.
Okay.
And you said, do not let your judgment of our personality flaws or ineptitude becloud your final judgment of who you are. And then you make this point. You said, whatever the case, charge it all to our heads and not to our hearts. What do you mean by that?
Yes, in working with clients concerning professional organizing, by the way, professional organizing involves me going to people's spaces or even their mental spaces, working with them to take out clutter. So that's decluttering, and then to put in organizing structures and solutions in place so that they can function better and be more and live more optimally. Now, in doing all of this, I realized that sometimes people may show flaws, may show behavioral tendencies that they don't really mean to show, but because of the cluttered environment, either mental clutter, physical clutter, or whatever it may be, because of that, they begin to act in ways that they normally wouldn't act. So when you have clutter in your space, it can frustrate the life out of you. And in the process, you react to people in ways that you don't want to. So I have learned not to judge people by their reactions based on the clutter or the disorganized environment that they have found themselves. In fact, there are a lot of medical terms for each of these clutter related, should I say, sicknesses. So it is for real. So I have learned to be sympathetic because I know firsthand how clutter, either in your space or mental clutter or document clutter, can make you act out of who you really are. So because of that, I always just have learned, even when the client feels bad for what they've done and they say, oh, I'm so sorry for speaking to you in that manner, I say to them that that's okay. It comes with the territory. We're used to it. So I would say I have had to learn in this journey of professional organizing to be very understanding, to be sympathetic with my clients, to be empathetic sometimes with my clients, because what you're showing out there is showing because something is not in order. And the moment you bring that order, you find out that that person is transformed and they start loving up on you. In fact, most times when we're done 3 days, 4 days in a client's house and we're leaving, they start missing us. All the drama that went down is over. They start missing us, and it will be foolhardy of me to judge them based on what they showcased when they were in that state of clutter.
Wow. All right. We have about 2 minutes to go. Time has gone so quickly. What is new in the world of Cresta Durojaiye?
Well, I would say Cresta Durojaiye is excited, looking forward to launching the Madhouse book on the 31st of January. And that is what is new. That is what is sizzling. That's what is driving my excitement now, because I cannot wait to launch that book and get it out there in the hands of many people to read and learn about professional organizing, enjoy the drama that goes with it. You know how people love drama these days, to at least ease all the tension. That is what is new. And then I would add something that, in addition to that, maybe I will allow you to finish and then I'll use that as my closing remarks. Something new that has opened my eyes to how I approach productivity and organizing in this new year.
Go for it, please. We want to hear that. Go for
Okay.
that as a parting shot to our listeners.
Okay, so over time, like I said, I see productivity as, something that I need to ensure that I am making consistent progress on an ongoing basis. But with all of the things that we have experienced globally, with the pandemic and all, I have started to see productivity in a new light. And when you told me we're going to do reimagine productivity, I laughed. I'm like, how does he know that I'm beginning to reimagine this thing I have been calling productivity? Now, in the wake of all of the pandemic and all the global things, global situations, unrest, and all of that, I realized that productivity is based on, like, your definition of productivity, or the size of your steps, or the progress or the strides that you make, is determined by the season that you find yourself. So, in other words, the season determines the size of the steps that you can take. So, in this particular seasons that we've been finding ourselves in, I realize that a lot of people are under a lot of pressure mentally, and as a result, they can't even do anything. I just want to say, if you know that you find yourself at a place where you can't do much, it's okay. Resting and just breathing is productive enough until you're able to do more. Don't overpressure yourself. Productivity in this season can be as good as just breathing, just resting until you have the strength and the momentum to go for it again. So reimagine productivity and begin to see it as you learning in this season to determine what it is that you can push yourself to. Don't over push it. If you don't feel up to it, take a break. Feel up to it, rise up and do. If all you can do is baby steps, do it. If you know at point that you can do more than that, then do it. But know the seasons you're in, know what you can afford to do, and do it as you can carry it.
Wow. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cresta, for joining us
Thank
this
you.
evening.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me. Thank you so much.
this has been so fantastic. I'm going to go back, listen to your responses again. And to our viewers, our website, tmeinsights.com, we're going to be sharing snippets from what Cresta has been talking about. So you can go there. Our social media handles are showing up on the screen. Give us a thumbs up, share the message. And we're going to continue this conversation on productivity next week, Monday. So do not miss it. Once again, Cresta, thank you for joining us. And to our viewers,
Thank
we'll see
you.
you next week.